Hi, I'm Rad.
And I'm Bren.
And we're astronomers at the ROG. Join us on a tour of the night sky for the month of October. We'll be using a cool program called Stellarium, which is like a virtual planetarium. And you can download this onto your own computer. And if you want the real planetarium experience, you could visit us here at the observatory. And remember to take photos of whatever you see and tweet them to us. Our Twitter handle is @ROGAstronomers. Now we have a few observing tips before we start. The best time to see objects is when they're at their highest point in the sky. And this is because the light travels through less atmosphere and suffers a lot less distortion.
So unless you're looking at the moon, you must allow your eyes to adapt to the darkness. You can use a red torch if you need light. Also, very important, once you're outside looking at the stars, you might get hooked just like us, so make sure you're dressed warmly for your stargazing session, and that way you can enjoy it even more. Okay, so we're going to show you the night sky at 9 PM, and the first thing to do is to find north. You can do this by looking for the plough. Now this looks a little bit like a saucepan shape, and is easy to find even from light polluted London. The plough points to Polaris. It is also part of Ursa Major. The rest of the constellation is actually too faint to see from the city. Once you've found Polaris, look directly down and you'll be facing north. If you watch the sky across the night, you'll see the stars appear to move. Facing north, they move anti-clockwise. This is because the Earth is spinning. The Earth takes 23 hours, 56 minutes and 4 seconds to rotate once on its axis. This means the stars take the same amount of time to make one complete circle around Polaris. Once you've found the plough, you should look out for Cassiopeia, an M or W shape made up of 5 stars. The stars that make up Cassiopeia are circumpolar. If we fast forward time, we see that they never rise or set from London, they are always above the horizon.
Cassiopeia can be used as an arrow as it points to interesting objects rising in the eastern sky. In the southern sky, objects rise in the east and set in the west, as does the sun and the moon. They reach culmination, their highest point, in the south. So let's take a look at which objects are popping up above the eastern horizon in early October. Let's start with Auriga and Perseus. The brightest star of the hexagonal Auriga is Capella, a quadruple star system consisting of 2 binaries. 2 of the stars are on their way to becoming red giants, and this will be the next stage of evolution for our Sun. The other 2 stars are 2 small red dwarf stars. These stars have a much longer lifetime than the Sun. Perseus is visible to the upper right of Auriga, and Merfak is the brightest star. It is a giant 8 times the mass of the Sun and over 500 degrees hotter. Within Perseus you will find the double cluster NGC 884 and NGC 869, and these can be seen with the naked eye if you head out into the deepest, darkest countryside. Each cluster contains a few hundred stars, much hotter and brighter than our Sun. The clusters themselves are separated by a few hundred light years, and overall they are 7,000 light years away from us. This means we see them as they were 7,000 years ago. Now, if you want to see the clusters in more detail, we recommend using binoculars. Binoculars are essentially 2 little telescopes with lenses inside of them. For stargazing, we recommend 15 by 70 binoculars. These have a magnification factor of 15 and a lens size of 70 millimeters. The larger the lens, the more light the binoculars can capture and the more sensitive they are. Now these must be attached to a tripod because the high magnification means every slight wobble in your arms will be greatly exaggerated whilst looking through the binoculars.
To the right of the double cluster is the Great Square of Pegasus. Pegasus leads us to our nearest big galaxy, Andromeda, a beautiful spiral star city 1.5 times bigger than the Milky Way. It looks like an elongated white smudge in the sky, but if you look closely, you may spot a central bright region. This is the nucleus of the galaxy and contains a high concentration of old stars. Around the spiral arms are younger stars. The arms are the star factories of the galaxy. The best way to look at Andromeda is with averted vision. Don't look straight at it, and you'll be using very light-sensitive rod cells in your eyes. We use this technique to look at Andromeda through the Great Equatorial Telescope here at the observatory. If you get hooked on astronomy, like us, you may want to invest in a telescope. There are two main types: refractors, which have lenses, and reflectors, which have mirrors. Refractors tend to be quite cheap and portable, but are often quite long. They also suffer from chromatic aberration. This means the lens splits light into its constituent colours, so you end up with a rainbow effect in your image when you look through the eyepiece. Reflectors are more expensive and give you better quality images. Mirrors don't produce those rainbow effects. The magnification depends on the ratio of the focal length of the main lens or mirror and the focal length of the eyepiece. You can change the magnification by changing the eyepiece. A shorter focal length eyepiece will give you greater magnification. These should only be used if you are in a very dark region with clear skies and low humidity. Otherwise, if you zoom in too far, the object will be too faint and blurry. If you have a camera, it's definitely worth taking a long exposure photo. You might be able to capture the colours of these objects. You may need a bracket to attach your camera to the telescope so that you can take stable images. If your telescope has a motor and a handset, you could set it to track objects across the sky, and an internal GPS system will allow you to calibrate it so that it knows which direction to point in. And for more information about observing tips, take a look at the link at the end of this vodcast.
Also, in the first half of the month, catch the summer triangle high in the southwest. We talked about the stars that make up the triangle in the September Look Up vodcast. It's a really simple and bright asterism to look for before winter sets in and it starts to set earlier in the evenings. Now, later in the month, you will see lots more interesting objects rising in the east, and we will talk about some of these in our November vodcast, but there are a few you can look out for in the meantime. Towards the end of the month, look for Taurus with its brightest star, Aldebaran. This is a dying star. It will lose its gas slowly, eventually becoming a compact star called a white dwarf, and this is how our sun will die. Aldebaran is the bloodshot eye of Taurus the bull. You may recognise Taurus as it's one of the star signs. Also look for the beautiful open clusters called the Pleiades and the Hyades. These are both visible to the naked eye and are best seen when they're higher up in the sky and the atmospheric distortion is less. We'll return to these next month. Also, Orion and Gemini will rise earlier in the east towards the end of the month. The appearance of these two constellations marks the arrival of winter. This part of the sky will be full of things to see with the eye, and there'll be lots of objects to probe further with a telescope. We hope in the coming months the skies will be clear, allowing you to capture some images of stars, faint nebulae, and even distant galaxies.
If you're an early riser, look out for Jupiter, the largest planet in our solar system. Jupiter rises after midnight and can be seen about an hour before sunrise, while the sky is still relatively dark. We suggest taking a look through binoculars to see the 4 largest moons. And if you have a DSLR camera, you can take a photo of Jupiter and its moons with a long telephoto lens. The moons can be imaged this way without the use of a telescope. On the 21st, look for the Orionid meteor shower. We often call these shooting stars, but in fact, these bright streaks are due to cometary dust entering our atmosphere as we plough into them on our way around the sun. Their high speeds result in them burning up and they become visible to us. The Orionids come from the trail of debris from a comet called Halley, a ball of ice and rock orbiting the sun every 75 or 76 years. You can expect to see up to about 30 bright meteors an hour in the early eastern sky just after midnight.
So there is a lot to look for in October, and as the sun sets earlier, there'll be more time for stargazing, especially after the 26th when the clocks go back to Greenwich Mean Time. And remember to wear warm clothes before you look up.